Hello mathematicians, this is Mrs. Petrova with another 6th grade CPM lesson. How does it make sense? Before we continue, we need to have few supplies ready. If you do not have the handout that I have that I'm going to use, you would need your ebook and your notebook. Of course, something to write with. If you're not using a notebook, then have a paper for you to take notes the way your teacher has been telling you. So today's target is solving problems involving fraction division. So everything that we're doing involving fraction division. If you haven't done so, go ahead and write your lesson title. Or if you have this handout, feel free to annotate. I am going to do the core problem, so starting with problem 43. Drea is writing a piece of music. She has decided to replace a 3/4 note, which takes up 3/4 of a small section of the music called a measure, with 1/8 notes, which each take up 1/8 of a measure. Work with your team and use the diagrams to help you figure out how many 1/8 notes she will need. Then represent the problem and its solution with a mathematical division sentence and a diagram. Be prepared to describe your strategies to the class. Again, if you're taking notes on your own, you would have to draw the diagram yourselves. I have prepared for us a circle diagram. So one whole circle represents the one on the number line, and I will do both representations. So if you prefer a number line, you can do that. Notice that I have divided into 8 equal pieces based on the notes because we want to replace with 1/8. So right now let's annotate what's the important information. So she wants to replace a 3/4 note with 1/8 notes. And our directions are we need to figure out how many 1/8 notes. So if you're not writing anything else in your notebook, you could be writing the sentence. Or when it starts asking how many, then you would answer that. So let's take a look at our diagram. So 3/4 notes. So if we are gonna be drawing 3/4, let's see, I'm gonna shade 3/4, or I'm thinking of if I cut it in half, there's the 3/4 pieces that I can see. So I definitely have 3/4. Now, how many 1/8 is that? So looking at, we want the 3/4 to be replaced with 1/8. So I want to use the same information just for 1/8. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it looks like each of these is 1/8, and it takes 6 of them. So if I have to answer my question visually, my division sentence, how many 1/8 fit into 3/4? So there it is. I can even count them here. I just made it twice so you guys can see that it is 3/4, but we're counting how many go inside. It is very similar in the number line. So there's the 3/4 from 0 to 1. It's only 3 parts. So 1, 2, 3 parts out of 4/4. So the one could be written as 4/4. But how do I count 1/8? So I will use the double number line. So right here, I'm gonna cut it in half. So that will be 2/8. So exactly where the 1/4 is 2/8. And if I continue with this idea, there's the 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, and exactly 6/8. So I could see there are 6 of them as my answer. So visually with the diagram was pretty easy, I guess. So it doesn't matter which diagram, I could just count. And of course we need to know how to draw the number line. So at this time, let's write our division statement. So if you haven't written things down, you want to make sure you're writing the word division statement, right? So that's what they wanted us to do. So right now my division statement is, I started with 3/4, and she wants to replace in how many? So 3/4 divided by 1/8 give us exactly 6 of them, or 6 equal pieces of 1/8. So if you're reading it backwards, 6 pieces of 1/8 gives you 3/4. Problem 6-44. Malik was catching up on homework when he noticed that he got the same answer dividing 3 by 1/5 as he did when he multiplied 3 by 5. In other words, so 3 divided by 1/5, he wrote it as equal to 3 times 5, which is equal to 15. He asked his teammates, is dividing by 1/5 always the same as multiplying by 5? Liam drew the two diagrams on the right and wrote down 5 times 1/5 equals 1, and 1 divided by 1/5 equals 5. Does it have something to do with the fact that there are 5 1/5 in each hole, 10 1/5 in 2 holes, and 15 1/5 in 3 holes? Liam asked. Or, asked Malik, is it because 1 is 1/5 of 5, and 2 is 1/5 of 10, and 3 is 1/5 of 15? Okay, so let's take a look and make sense of what Malik and his friend Liam are doing. At this time, let's not write anything yet. They haven't told us to write. They said to look at the diagrams and figure out what's happening. So discuss with your team, do Liam's and Malik's explanations both make sense? Why or why not? Can you think of any other ways to explain? So he noticed that 3 divided by 1/5, so there's a number line with 3, and looks like they are dividing by 1/5. So this little tiny piece is 1/5 right over here. So if we are saying how many 1/5 fit into the 3, we should get 15, or 3 groups. So one group of 5 of them, 1 2 3 4 5, another group of 5, and another group of 5, but they're 1/5. So I do see it. Hopefully you do see it too. So it does make sense to me. So in order to explain, I do see how he got that. Now, if you haven't written anything, perhaps just write what he realized is true. So you want to write down this statement. So make sure you start with the 3. Now, if you'd like also, you could draw one of the diagrams. Now, let's take a look at what about the other ones. Let's see. 5 times 1/5 is 1. Yes, we just noticed that. So 1/5 and then 5 of them takes me to the 1 whole, or 5/5. So I'm going to agree with this statement as well, and with this statement. So all these statements are really good to write in your notes. Now let's take a look if 2 is 1/5 of 10. Well, the 10, do you see it somewhere? So let's see. 2 is, so there's a 2, is 1/5 of 10. How can we make sense of that? So as we see in our diagrams, it takes 10/5 to get to the 2. So we could write it as 1/5 times 10 equals 2, and it's similar to the 15. So definitely I'm going to agree with this statement. And make sure you record at least some of those statements down before we continue to example B. Malik was looking at problem 6-43 and asked, does this work when both numbers are fractions? Can you find how many 1/8 are in 3/4 by multiplying 3/4 by 8? What do you think? Refer back to the diagram you drew for problem 6-43. Be ready to explain your ideas. So here's the diagram from earlier problem. You have it on your notebook hopefully. If you do not, go ahead and stop and do it. And Malik is asking again, how many 1/8 are in 3/4? We already wrote that, and basically, physically speaking, or on our diagram, we know that the answer is 6. So how many 1/8 go into 3/4? But now he is asking, what if we wrote 3/4 multiplied by 8? Would that still work? Well, let's take a look, and I'm getting that information, of course, from here, from the directions. So at this time, multiplication is like repeated, like 8 groups of 3/4, but I don't see that in the picture. So what we could do is use our knowledge of multiplication. We're going to divide it over 1, so 8 becomes 8 over 1. So let's see if we're going to get the same answer, 6. So we have 3/4 times 8 over 1, and our knowledge is when we multiply fraction, top with the top and bottom with the bottom. Now I'm using times with a little x, but you could use dots as well. So right now my numerator is the number 24, or 3 times 8 is 24. And looks like I made a mistake, so hopefully you're not copying. On the bottom, it says 4 times 1. So I was just writing it too quick. So 4 times 1, so our denominator will be 4. Is 24 divided by 4? Remember we learned that fraction bar really means division. So top number 24 divided by 4. That is definitely going to give me 6. So we're getting the same answer. If we did not have the diagram, looks like instead of dividing, he's asking, well, is it the same if we multiply by something different? So instead of 1/8, we did 8/1. So we did get the same answer.